Hi, I'm Heather Marie Montilla, and you are watching PBS Books. Thank you for joining us. PBS Books, in collaboration with South Florida PBS, is pleased to host tonight's conversation with trailblazing author Juliet Menendez in celebration of the 2022 Library of Congress National Book Festival. PBS Books is proud to partner with the Library of Congress to promote their 2022 National Book Festival. Let's take a moment to hear from the Librarian of Congress, Dr. Carla Hayden.
Books bring us together as the Library of Congress National Book Festival returns in person on September 3rd at the Washington Convention Center. The festival is free for readers of all ages. We will also be live streaming 3 stages for audiences across the country. Featured authors this year include Janelle Monáe, Leslie Jordan, Niall DeMarco, Nick Offerman, Angie Thomas, and more. So go to loc.gov/bookfest for more.
Thank you. Well, if you can travel, and I want you all to know that actually South Florida is it's about less than 3-hour plane ride from Washington, D.C. Don't miss, if you can get there, the 2022 Library of Congress National Book Festival. It's on Saturday, September 3rd from 9 a.m. to 8 p.m. The festival is free and opened to everyone. The complete schedule for the 2022 Library of Congress National Book Festival can be found at loc.gov/bookfest. But if you can't be there in person, you can live stream it. And you can also work to curate your own experience from the comfort of your home. Well, now through August 31st, PBS Books and PBS stations across the country will host a series of 10 virtual events with 11 authors. This is our second. They will also be available on demand at PBS Books and the National Book Festival. Let's take a quick moment to hear from our partner station, South Florida PBS, their president and CEO, Dolores Sugdeo.
Hello, everyone. I'm Dolores Sugdeo, President and CEO for South Florida PBS, and I'm thrilled to introduce this evening's event with author Juliet Menendez in celebration of the 22nd Annual Library of Congress National Book Festival. I'm proud that South Florida PBS is committed to sharing the voices of contemporary authors through our program Between the Covers, hosted by Ann Bocock, who will be moderating today's conversation. There's no question that books have the ability to bring people from various places together, just like the Library of Congress National Book Festival theme, Books Bring Us Together. We hope that you'll join us on a journey tonight and learn more about Juliet Menendez and her book, Latinitas, Celebrating 40 Big Dreamers, which celebrates trailblazing Latino women. We're also thrilled that PBS Books partners with libraries, as libraries are a crucial partner for South Florida PBS and other PBS stations across the country. We hope you'll enjoy tonight's conversation. South Florida PBS is proud to be a part of this important event. Back to you, Heather.
Thank you, Dolores, and thank you for your words. Today's conversation, as Dolores shared, focuses on Juliet Menendez and her work, Latinitas. Her involvement with the festival will also be discussing. Her book has gorgeous hand-painted illustrations, and it explores how influential Latinas from all over the US and Latin America became the women we celebrate today. Well, before we begin, as you all know, I'd like to thank our library partners, more than 1,800 strong across the country, as well as numerous PBS stations. But most importantly, we'd like to thank you for joining us. Quick reminder before we do our introductions, if you have a question for Juliet, please do not forget to put it in the chat. If time permits, Juliet will be answering the questions live on the program tonight. So, the moment you've been waiting for, Juliet Menendez. Juliet Menendez is a Guatemalan American author and illustrator living between Guatemala City, Paris, and New York. While working as a bilingual teacher in New York City's public schools, Menendez noted the need for more books that depicted children like the ones in her classes. She studied design and illustration in Paris and now spends days with her watercolor and notebook. Latinitas Celebrating 40 Big Dreamers is Menendez's first children's book and is featured, as you now know, in the 2022 National Book Festival. Welcome, Juliet.
Hi, thank you so much for having me here.
Oh, we're so happy to have you, and we're so excited to talk about your book, which I'm so excited to have because I think it is so wonderful, especially as someone who is a mother of a Latina. So wonderful. So to moderate today's conversation, I am pleased to introduce Anne Bocock. Anne began her broadcasting career in radio news in Richmond, Virginia. She then joined the United Press International as a wire service reporter, missing broadcasting. She returned to her work as an anchor, reporter, and talk show host, working in several East Coast markets. She was the host of the talk show Florida Forum on the NPR affiliate radio station WXEL for 8 years, with interviews ranging from the national interest to local celebrities. She is currently the host of The Fabulous Between the Covers, an interview show about books and authors that I love, and it is produced by South Florida PBS, and it is distributed nationally. Before COVID arrived, Between the Covers was taped in front of a studio audience. The current season will be live streamed, open to everyone, and later edited for national television distribution. Welcome, Anne.
Thank you, Heather. I'm so glad to be back. Thanks for inviting me.
We're so excited to have you. You know, you are one of my favorite hosts. Every year when we do this, I love having you as the host of our show. So thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Can you tell us, I know Between the Covers, it has changed a little bit, obviously, because of COVID. Can you share a little bit about what you worked on this summer and what's in store for the next year?
Well, I'll tell you what's in store is that we're back in the studio. So I am thrilled about that. It really takes on a different life when it's face-to-face. So I am absolutely delighted about that. We will be doing some virtual, but most of them will be in person in the studio. In the summer, we did something a little different, and it was all done. It was all social media directed, and we did short local author interviews, and it was wonderful. It was really a time to spotlight South Florida, because during a regular season, it's generally New York Times bestsellers and award-winning authors. So this brought it home, and it was very special to us. But we're really looking forward to the new season starting in October.
That's so exciting and so wonderful. So one of the things I love about this year's National Book Festival, the Library of Congress National Book Festival 2022, is that it is back in person too, right? Yes, I feel like one of the things we've learned is that we can connect with people through the computer. And one of the cool things too, as we discussed, is people will be able to stream that content all day on September 3rd. And then that content will also be available for you, me, everyone to be able to access all of the content that was at the festival. I think about 2 weeks after they'll be rolling it out. So I know I love watching your show because I can access that content. I know it's just such a resource for me as an avid reader and as someone who also has a book show, that I think it'll also be great that you can utilize that content too.
I'm thrilled about this because even like you said, it's only a 3-hour plane ride. I can't go, but I can watch all of this to my heart's content. So thank you for that.
Well, without further ado, enjoy the conversation with Juliet. I can't wait to hear.
Thanks, Heather. Juliet, welcome and hello. It is so nice to meet you.
It is such a pleasure to meet you as well. Thank you so much.
Okay, so here is my one word for your book, and it's beautiful. It's beautiful artistically. It's beautiful in what you wrote. And first of all libraries ought to have this book. All schools ought to have this book. It's that kind of, not just little girls. Yes, it is about girls, but boys should be reading this book as well. It celebrates 40 big dreamers. And we are talking women that are scientists and activists and artists and even a Supreme Court justice. Let's take a step back. Where did the idea come from? And how did your background, I guess, propel you into making this book?
That's a great question. Well, it started as a poster project all the way back in 2014, which I can't believe it's been so long. At the time, I was working as an art teacher in Upper Manhattan, and my students had families that mainly came from the Dominican Republic, Puerto Rico, Mexico. But when I would walk through the halls of the schools, I would see posters up on the wall, people like Benjamin Franklin, Einstein, and Dali. And I thought to myself, what if there were some fresh new faces up on these walls that looked more like my students, that came from similar backgrounds? And so that led me to start really researching Latinx history, and I was finding all these great stories, but something incredibly important was missing. Women. When I was finding their stories, they were in the footnotes, in the margins, and I knew that that was not the case. They were a central part of shaping our history. So I decided to dedicate my research to celebrating Latina women. And since I knew that these stories really needed to be told, I knew it couldn't just be a poster project, though my background was in art and design, that I really needed to turn this into a book. So that's really how Latinitas came to be. And I guess the way my background played into it was being a teacher and just seeing the need for, these stories out there and for my students to be inspired. And I guess also my background in art and design and my love of writing as well.
Well, honestly, I've never seen anything quite like this. And here we are. We're doing this in honor of the Library of Congress National Book Festival. So I have to ask, have you done the event before? And if not, is this your first time? And are you really excited?
I've never done this event, and I'm so excited. It's such an incredible honor, and some of my favorite authors are going to be there too. And it's amazing. It's like a dream.
Congratulations on that. We're happy for you. As you said, you're an artist. Your background is in illustration and design. And the way this book is crafted, on one page is the drawing that it's not a drawing. You did the artwork on the one page, and on the opposite page is the story. And you depict each story from the mind of a young girl. The illustrations themselves pretty much tell the story, which is fantastic. Talk about how you decided on this particular art form.
Well, I've always loved painting with watercolors, but this book has a particular kind of iconic graphic quality, and it's really, as I mentioned, it was started as a poster project, so I looked to a lot of poster art as inspiration. I really wanted these women to look like icons. At the same time, as you pointed out, I illustrated them as young girls, and the big reason for that was because while I certainly wanted to highlight their achievements and accomplishments, I also really wanted to show where these journeys began so that when readers pick up this book, they can see that just like them, these women started out, making mistakes, playing games, and figuring out who they are in the world. So that's why they're depicted as children, but they still have that iconic quality that was really inspired by, artists like Fortunato de Pero and, this kind of graphic kind of modernist quality to them.
It's a beautiful quality, the way you put it together. And when I was a kid, I loved biographies. And I think in this particular book, you give that child a look at this famous person's childhood, which makes it approachable and relatable, and maybe if they could do it, I could do it.
Exactly.
That obviously that was your intent. Well, Mike, I have to know, how do you do the research for this? And I'm asking this, okay, full disclosure here. There were quite a few of these people I didn't know anything about. So where did you already know these names? And how did you research it?
Yeah, so I didn't know many of the names in this.
Oh, good.
Yes, that was really the whole reason that made me decide to create this book, because I had, of course, known about people like Sonia Sotomayor, Isabel Allende, and they're in the book, and I admire them greatly. But there were so many women that I realized have been such pillars of our history that I really didn't know very much about. For example, Gumersinda Páez from Panama. She was the first Black Congresswoman in Panama, and she actually was one of the people who helped write the Constitution after the 1941 coup. And she, included things like pay for women who are on maternity leave, and included Afro-Latinx rights. And, she was already so ahead of her time, and I hadn't actually known about her. She came from a background of writing radio novelas, and that's how she had all of these people from Panama knowing the stories of working class people like herself. And I really didn't know about her. Or, for example, Susana Torre, the architect, who figured out how to create architecture that was actually feminist, like the first fire station that welcomed women into being firefighters, and things like that. That I really didn't know these women before, but finding their stories it was such a gift, and I knew it was a gift that I wanted to share with readers.
What kind of material did you use to find them? I mean, you're not just Googling to find out where were there letters, were there books that needed to be translated?
Yes, so I would often look, for example, I would find, I really wanted this book to represent a lot of different professions, and that was the initial idea. And so I would find different professions and then look to find what women were in these professions, and that was kind of where my search started. And then I would look into archives, and I would try to find these out-of-print books. I contacted people, for example, for Gumersinda Páez, who I mentioned, I saw a congresswoman, a current congresswoman, Balbina Herrera, holding this book that was about her. I couldn't find the book anywhere, and I went out on a limb and decided to contact her and see if somehow she could share this book with me. And she called me back and, was willing to share pages from the book. And another person who was writing her thesis on her, Dania Batista, she shared her whole thesis, like all of the research she had about her. So it was, these little tiny kind of clues, and then it would be this whole treasure hunt of finding historians and, family members who had preserved documents and old newspaper articles that mentioned these women. It really was a whole process, very much like a treasure hunt.
It's a treasure hunt. It's a jigsaw puzzle. And of course they would share it with you. Who wouldn't? You're just so easy to talk to. No wonder it took from 2014, I think you said. That's a lot of information to go through.
Yes.
To get to now. In my mind, this book is about inclusion. It's about representation. And I sense that that is something that is deeply important to you. And how much does diversity matter in children's books?
There's so many people who have said this so much better than me, but to me, creating a book, I just wanted it to reflect the reality we live in, right? So if you look at Latin America, there are so many different types of people from so many different backgrounds and ethnicities and cultures, and I wanted that to be reflected in the book. So for me, it was really just reflecting what's already out there. That was really the goal.
I was I don't know if surprised is the word, but I guess happily surprised that there were so many cultures, so many countries. This is not narrow. This is wide, and that was intentional, was it not?
Yes, definitely. I really wanted to show the great diversity that Latinx that the Latinx cultures have, and it's really something that, growing up in a place like Guatemala, where I am now, there's so many languages here, so many indigenous languages. There's, of course, the Spanish culture, but there's also so much more than that. And I really wanted this book to reflect that. So I even included some indigenous words in the text and things like that, especially for Rigoberta Menchú Tum, here from Guatemala, the Nobel Peace Prize winner. So I think that that's just something that's part of how I grew up and experienced the world, and I wanted that to be reflected in the book.
Let's talk a little bit about how you did experience the world. When Heather was giving your introduction, and we are talking Guatemala and Paris and New York, and I mean, that's pretty interesting. How did you end up here, and what was the journey?
So my mother is actually Irish American. She was born in the United States, right outside of Washington, D.C. So coming to the National Book Festival will be a bit of a homecoming for me. I'm currently in Guatemala. And my father is from Guatemala. And the whole French side, I don't know. We took French in high school, my sisters and I, and my oldest sister, or one of my older sisters, lives in Paris. And so I decided to study design and illustration in France. So that's kind of how all of these different parts came together. And my mother has always called us an international family. So I guess she herself knows like 7 languages and has always really loved exploring other cultures. So that was always a big part of my upbringing.
So what would be the takeaway from you yourself being immersed in all of these cultures around the world?
I think that it gives me this way to kind of look at things from an outsider's perspective, at the same time having lived there and met so many people, and I'm kind of both in the culture and outside of it, and it makes me, I think, maybe observant in a different way than that I might have been.
Another word I would have to describe the book would be, I guess, inspirational. Because you show these women who are incredible women with every sense of the word, being inspired perhaps by a situation, an event, or a person. And you bring this down to their childhood level. So that begs the question, who inspired you, or what event inspired you?
Well, all of the women in the book most certainly inspired me, but I would say that probably what led me into wanting to create books really was my experience as a teacher. After I studied studio art, I knew that when I was in college, I worked helping just, Latinx youth after school, and I just knew that I really wanted to be part of that community. And so I went into teaching soon after college, and there were some great books in our classroom library, but there was so much room for so much more, and it meant so much to me to be able to connect with my students. I would create these little kind of little books, but they weren't real at the time. They were just like little stories about students in my classroom, and they were just about their daily lives, and I could tell how much it meant to them. I didn't put their actual names, but I would just use little snippets of things they were doing at the time, and it meant so much to them to see themselves reflected in this way. And that's really what inspired me to go into studying illustration and design, and to just want to create more books that reflected, you know, kids that might have grown up like me or like my students. And that was really what inspired everything from then on.
As a teacher, I am sure that there is this light bulb moment when the child sees herself or himself in that situation, depicted in a book, in a story, in a painting. It means something.
I think it really does. I know that, you know, even just giving them little ideas about, for me, it was so much about just connecting with them and, you know, showing this is how they handled something and turning it into a little story. It would inspire the rest of the class, and they felt so proud that it was their own story. And they'd be like, oh, you know, Ms. Menendez, that really sounds a lot like me. I was like, oh, does it? And they loved it so much. And I know those weren't real books at the time. They were just these little kind of illustrations to share. I was working with first graders, but they just brought so much joy to that. And then seeing how much they responded to the books we did have in our classroom library that were by Latinx authors. You know, we did have Dr. Seuss translated into Spanish, but that wasn't the same thing at all as reading, you know, books by Monica Brown and John Parra, and, you know, all of these authors that just, Juana Martinez Neal, that brought so much to the classroom. And I knew that that was a path I wanted to take.
Yes, having characters that look like you or that talk like you, it makes a difference. I have the English version of your book. How many other languages has your book been published in?
It's currently in Spanish as well. So Una celebración de 40 soñadores audaces is the Spanish title. And there's a board book version as well that's bilingual. But so far it's in English and Spanish.
Would you say that there's 40 stories in here, and then there's 40 pages of different women, and then at the end there are like 10, I think I counted 10, perhaps others, that there were little snippets because you couldn't make this book tremendous, so they just didn't make that first 40. Would you say that there's one thread, perhaps, or one characteristic that you would find across the board for all of these women?
Definitely. I think that all of these women shared this love for their communities. And first and foremost, before, you know, they certainly had their own ambitions, but they really had a core sense of who they were and what they wanted to contribute to their communities. And it really guided all of them. And you know, they weren't satisfied either just kind of being the token Latina. In all of the stories, they really wanted to uplift and bring like the rest of the women with them, starting with Sor Juana de la Cruz, Sor Juana Inés de la Cruz in the 1600s. You know, she was, you know, unequivocally brilliant, and yet her whole thing was just that all women were these, you know, they weren't, it wasn't that she was exceptional, it was that all women had the capacity to achieve these incredible things. And when she wrote at that time, that was her whole message, all women should be able to do these things. So, and that's reflected all throughout the book.
What was interesting, you just said it starts in the 1600s, and there were several women of that era, and it goes all the way up into the present time. I would think it would have been very difficult finding that information. Was that the hardest?
Yes, some of the more historical women were harder to find because there were very few resources about them. And that's really when I would reach out to historians, people who were studying these women, making phone calls all around Latin America to see if somebody could help me out with some of these resources. Yes, they were some of the hardest ones to find out about.
I'm Ann Bocock, and you're watching PBS Books. I'm here with author Juliet Menendez in honor of the Library of Congress National Book Festival. Now let's get back to the conversation with Juliet. Was it hard to narrow it down to 40?
Yes, definitely. You know, I knew that I wanted to show a wide variety of professions and ethnicities and backgrounds. At the same time, this book was never meant to be comprehensive. And as you pointed out, there are 10 additional little stories, and there could be so many more. It's honestly, these were women that personally inspired me, and I really wanted to just show kind of a broad range and it to be more like an introduction than anything kind of definitive. So it was really hard to find the women, but I think that, you know, as I was researching, honestly, if it sparked this kind of curiosity and passion in me, and I just was like, oh my God, I love this woman. She's just so amazing. Look at this that she did and that she did. I would do this research in this cafe downstairs, and I would come running back home at the end of the day to tell my partner all about the women. And I knew that if I, could talk for, an hour after reading about them all day, that they had to be in the book because I just
it's so inspiring to do that work. Would you mind, Juliette, if we talked about a few of these women?
Of course.
I would like to start with one that everyone knows, and that's Supreme Court Justice Sonia Sotomayor. And you always knew that she was going to make the cut in the top 40?
Yes, definitely. She was one of the very first that I researched, actually. Her book came out around the time, actually, that I started this project, My Beloved World, and I was so inspired by her story.
I have a quick personal story about her. I was at a book event, and she was surrounded by, I guess it was U.S. Marshals, who were very insistent that she not get into the audience. And of course, quite like your book, she defied them, walks into a huge room. She walks right down into the audience, does not take questions from the adults, but any of the children, and they were mostly little girls, that had a question, walked right up there and she answered every single one. That was impressive for a room of maybe 500 people. That was really impressive. So,
oh my goodness, I have like goosebumps. Like she's so incredible. I love her so much. I love that story too.
There is my personal favorite, and then I'm going to ask you yours, was the Cuban ballerina. I hope I pronounced her name correctly. Alicia Alonso?
Yes.
Oh, I did well. Okay. If you could please tell her story, because that blew me away.
Yeah, so Alicia Alonso, she grew up in Cuba, and she was one of the very first dancers there, because there wasn't even a ballet school in Cuba, and they opened a ballet school, and she actually had the first pair of ballet shoes, and she would sleep with them under her pillow. She loved them so much. And her career was just starting to take off. She had run away to New York to become a ballerina, and she started losing her sight. And her husband was with her as she went through all these operations to try and regain her sight. And while she had these bandages on her eyes, he started showing her in the palm of her hand the choreography for the upcoming performance of Giselle. And, it was how they kind of got through that time. She just, I don't know how she could envision all these movements in her mind, but she was able to do so. And then when it was time for the show to come up, the ballerina who was going to play the part was actually sick. And Alicia Alonso took off the bandages from her eyes, but unfortunately she did not recover her sight. And nonetheless, because her husband had shown her all of these steps, and she was so amazing that she was able to imagine them in her mind and connect that with her body, which that blows me away. She was able to dance the part without being able to see, and she continued dancing without being able to see all of these years, and opened up her own ballet school in Cuba and brought it to so many rural places around Cuba as well. Ballet, she's such an inspiration. I'm glad that's one of your favorites. I love her story so much. It
was truly my favorite, and I read that one twice. I thought, how could she be blind and still do these principal ballerina parts? It absolutely amazed me. There are quite a few artists in the book, And you are an artist. I'm not going to say, so you tell me, who was your favorite artist?
Oh, that's so hard to say.
I didn't say it. Okay.
Yeah, I've never been able to pick a favorite Latinita to begin with or an artist. I always love so many, but I did really love coming across Maria Auxiliadora da Silva, um, who is from Brazil, and I just loved her colors so much and the way that she has her compositions. And what I loved was that she decided that she didn't want to fit into any category. So she didn't want to be this, one type of European art or another. She really kind of created her own art, and she used even her own hair to build up, parts of her paintings. And she just was so inventive, and, she made her own clothes, and she had a whole background in textiles. Her mother was a seamstress and did embroidery with her. So she really brought that into her art. And I've always loved this kind of, multimedia type art where, where artists have so many different materials that they bring in and inspiration. And I love that she had that background with her mother as well, that they would tell stories together through the weaving, and that it became such a central part of how her art looks now. So I would say I love her. And of course, all the writers. My grandmother too was a poet, so I had to include lots of poets.
Your grandmother
yes, was a poet. So.
Oh, you grew up in such an art family. That's wonderful.
Yes, definitely.
Now Frida Kahlo was also profiled in the book as well, and another one that most of us know of, and a fascinating story. But the others, no. I was pleasantly surprised with all of these new names. There was, I'm leaving the art section for a while. There was an astronaut that I had never heard of, Serena Onan.
Onion, I think so. I think that's how you pronounce her name.
And an astrophysicist.
Yes.
And I am truly embarrassed that I didn't know about any of them either. So, tell me a story that surprised you.
Well, for Serena Union, actually, I was amazed that she was not only an astronaut, but also a physician. So she studied medicine, and she really wanted to see how cells in the body respond to different environments, like being in space with gravity, without gravity, I mean. And so her story really blew me away, that was her specific passion, and that she still treats patients, on Earth. And then she also studies, she does Alzheimer's research and things like this in space. And I just thought, what a fascinating connection that she was able to make. And I loved her story. And also, you mentioned the astrophysicist Wanda Diaz Merced, and her story, much like Alicia Alonso, she also ended up becoming blind. And, we associate so much of astronomy with looking at the stars, and she came up with this way to listen to the stars through sonification. And she literally describes the stars as like listening to the symphony, and you can hear the way that she's turned every single wavelength and every single measurement into these pitches and tones, and it literally does sound like this beautiful orchestra playing. And she is able to turn that into data and information and learn about the stars. And I found their stories, everyone in this book really just blew me away, but those are some of the most surprising stories, for sure.
The way that she could listen to the stars, even writing that was like hearing a symphony. We do have an audience question, and I would remind anyone who has a question to put it into the chat, and we hopefully will have time to get to it. This is from Julie in Detroit, and her question for you, Juliet, is, have you used any of your students for feedback in developing your illustrations and the bios for Latinitas?
I would say that actually I didn't. I started this project when I was still working with students, but I ended up finishing it later after I had stopped teaching and dedicated myself full time to working on this book. But I will say that I did share these with my little niece to get some feedback, as well as a little nephew of mine, and I did, try to see how they would respond to it, as well as other children. I also work a little bit at the library here in Guatemala. So I did get some feedback, and actually a little girl at the library here was an inspiration for including one of the Latinitas, Mercedes Doretti, who's a forensic anthropologist. To be honest, it hadn't occurred to me to include a forensic anthropologist. And I met this little girl through my partner who was doing a program at the library. And she had this dream of being a forensic anthropologist, and she had read Rebel Girls, and she had read all of these other books with these collections of stories about women. And she said, you know what they don't have? A forensic anthropologist. And so because of her, I ended up finding out about this and another incredible story of Mercedes Doretti, and how she's been working for human rights and justice by her work in forensic anthropology. So definitely there were children involved, but not specifically my students.
It is amazing how smart children are. You hit the jackpot with that one.
Yes.
What do you want us adults to get from this book?
I think for me as a woman, and I'm sure many other women feel this way too, and any adult, but especially for women, I think there's this tendency to sometimes believe that women are in the margins or in the footnotes, or somehow not central to how our history is shaped. And I think that even though there's a part of us that maybe thinks, we know our own family histories, we know the women who have done incredible things, but there's a sense that men are at the center. But really, in reading this book and doing the research for this book, I found that women were just as much there the whole entire time, going all the way back to Sor Juana Inés de la Cruz from the 1600s. They were shaping everything. They were always part of it. They were never on the sidelines. And I really hope that everyone takes that away from reading this book, that just knowing they were always there. They always will be there. And they contributed so much to our history and really made it what it is today.
We have a question, and it is, how were you able to narrow it down to just 40? And the stories, he says, sound so detailed and so interesting. And I can underscore that, yes, they are detailed and interesting. And they're only one page. Each story is only one page. So how did you narrow it down?
Well, I was mentioning it a little bit before that. I knew I wanted to represent a lot of different professions and a lot of different backgrounds. But I think that for me, it was really just showing a lot of different places from Latin America and a lot of different cultures. But I knew that, I couldn't show everyone. So I would pick just, one person from one profession instead of having multiple people from the same profession, or similarly from countries. There are just a few from different countries. So I tried to whittle it down in that way. But I think that really it just came from stories that really touched my heart. And if, they got to me. And honestly, I fell in love with every single Latinita in this book. And if I could do that, then I knew that they had to be in it. And that was really how I made those final cuts. But again, there are so many more, and it could be so much longer.
It sounds like there might be more. And I will point out, because I think we probably glossed over it before, the book covers centuries of women, starting with the 1600s, and several countries. Do you remember how many different countries are here?
It's pretty much every country in Latin America. There's just a couple maybe that didn't quite make it. But it's all throughout Latin America. And I don't remember the exact number of countries in the book, but yes, it's all across Latin America.
You are an artist at heart. This book is both a story and an art book. So which direction did you start with? What was the process? Did you do the art first and then the story?
Well, initially I had started with the posters, but as I decided that I wanted it to be a book, I definitely would write the profiles first, because so much of the illustration has to do with, symbols of who these women were as children, and also I tried to connect it to their later legacy. So I really wanted to make sure that I had identified that in the profile first before I would do the illustration. So the writing actually did end up coming first in the end, even though there were initially about 10 posters that I had created, but I went back and redid the whole project based on the content I was finding.
I have one more art question, and that is, what is your preferred media?
Oh, I love watercolor so much. I have a background in printmaking. I used to do lithography, and I love that. But rather than using these huge stones and everything, I kept kind of that graphic quality and switched over to watercolor, where I can still create those kind of bold graphic styles. But I just love using paints and paintbrushes so much. And I really think that it also captures so much of Latin America with the textures I can create and things like that too. That's just really special to me.
Well, the book is very reminiscent of a watercolor too, the way your words flow. So Juliet, I want to thank you so much. And I'm looking at the clock, and it's time to bring Heather back in. So my questions are done. Juliet, thank you for letting me spend time with you.
It's been such a pleasure.
Well, I don't think we could go on without looking at some of your gorgeous art. And what's so neat for those of you, if you guys can see, is that it's in the front, and then you think it's the same in the back, but it's really not exactly the same, because in the front and the back, it says all of the countries that are included. And so I love how Juliet, within her artwork, is constantly hiding these like little treasures that you can find. And like even the table of contents. Like, this is so great for anyone to be able to understand, oh, that woman is from this country, right, at a glance. And it's the beauty of, I think, your training, Juliet, that helps us to navigate, especially, yes, we all love to read, but in a world where the world goes so fast, how great to be able to glance and be like, oh, you want to read about someone from Costa Rica? Let's find the flag, right? It's really cool. So Anne, thank you for guiding this conversation. I thought your questions were so thoughtful, and I always love having you on the show. And Juliet, your book is helping to tell these untold stories, these narratives, and you're so passionate about it. And it's so important, because we want our Latina girls to hear. We want them to hear these stories so they know they can be anything they want to be. And I love the diversity of that, of the countries, of the places, of who these women were and who they become. So you are fabulous. This is so wonderful. It is such a gift. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. It means so much to be here with all of you.
Well, we really have the Library of Congress National Book Festival to thank, because that's why we're here. We are celebrating the 2022 National Book Festival. You'll be in Washington, D.C. on September 3rd. Do you know the topic of your conversation or who you'll be speaking with?
I think it was Katie Gutierrez, but I need to check on that, actually. I'm sorry.
Well, if it's not, you should go listen to her talk, because I think she is actually going to be fabulous as well. And she's someone who
I think I said something about that, but actually I really need to check. I'm so sorry.
No, that's okay. So all of you out there, if you're able to obviously go to DC, please go to DC and enjoy this amazing festival. Hundreds of thousands of people will come and gather. They are people who love curiosity, and they love culture, and they love books. And it is a great way to meet and hear from your favorite author, get books signed. And it's also great because you get to explore new genres and meet your next favorite author. So it's a great experience. But I now have to close the program. Just want to remind all of you out there that tomorrow night, PBS Books will also continue the conversation, our series of 10 events. Tomorrow will be the third in this series, and it will be with Kate Clifford Larson. We'll actually be discussing a biography of Fannie Lou Hamer. So hope you'll be joining us. That will be at 8 p.m. Eastern, 7 p.m. Central. Until next time, it was great being here. Oh, one last thing. Don't forget to go, if you have any questions, to either pbsbooks.org, or the great place to go for the Library of Congress National Book Festival is loc.gov/bookfest. Until next time, I'm Heather Marie Montilla, and happy reading.